Advocacy journalism is defined as journalism that advocates a cause or expresses a viewpoint. This has led many to debate on whether advocacy journalism is ethically standing in the journalistic world that values objectivity. This debate is seen consistently with environmental journalism, as a Pew Research survey found that climate change is the most polarizing topic in America. Amy Harder, one of the leading U.S. journalists in environmental studies, said in an interview with Julian Wettengale, a staff correspondent for the Clean Energy Wire, that as climate change becomes a greater issue, the coverage must remain unbiased. Harder went on to explain that she doesn't give airtime to those who question the science of climate change, but beyond that, she said she doesn't take positions. There are multiple journalists that share the same sentiments as Harder, as this type of reporting has been a topic of controversy in the community for some time now. In a Potter box, the dilemma would be the biased perspective of advocacy journalism. Journalists that are against advocacy journalism value objectivity, preferring to let the audience interpret the piece and pick a side on their own. The principle of these journalists is Immanuel Kant's categorical imperative, meaning one should act on that maxim which you will to become a universal law. The journalist will be objective in everything they publish. In this dilemma, the journalist remains loyal to the craft, considering they do not believe advocacy journalism is true journalism. Rachel Fobar, a Wildlife Watch reporter for National Geographic, follows a similar standard to Harder, but she acknowledges the implicit biases that humans have, even journalists.
Yeah, well, I think we are all human beings, and so we're all sort of inherently biased, and that is tricky, and it's something I think all journalists kind of have to grapple with, because we can't pretend like we don't have biases, like we all do. I think the best way to combat that is just by giving people a chance to respond, and when you're writing about them, and really incorporating their responses, not just including one line, kind of incorporating it throughout and making sure that you're fair to them, and also seeking out opinions that don't necessarily align with your own.
Raza Rumi, director of Ithaca College's Park Center for Independent Media, goes further with the concept of bias in journalism.
In certain cases, objectivity is important, right? So when you are dealing with numbers, election results, you have to be accurate, right? But more importantly are two terms which to me ought to be right at the center of journalistic ethics, and that is fairness and accuracy.
While objectivity is an aspect of fairness that can ensure information is being reported without being skewed, it cannot hold a permanent place in journalism. In the Society of Professional Journalists Code of Ethics, the word objective is not used in any form, but the preamble states, ethical journalism strives to ensure the free exchange of information that is accurate, fair, and thorough. While advocacy journalism may be controversial today, it hasn't always been that way. Journalism in America has its roots in partisan media. From Benjamin Franklin, who wrote under pseudonyms like Silence Dogood, advocating for a revolution, to Upton Sinclair, who advocated for worker safety, good journalism wasn't always objective. Historian William Gannep explains that 19th century newspaper editors unabashedly shaped the news and their editorial comment to partisan purposes. They sought to convert the doubters, recover the wavering, and hold the committed. In the 18th century, one of America's founding fathers, Benjamin Franklin, wrote 14 letters published in his brother's paper, the New England Courant, under the pen name Silence Dogood. Among many topics, the most pressing issue that Franklin advocated for is the establishment of the freedom of speech and the freedom of the press in the colonies. Franklin went on to publish his own chain of print shops, with publications unabashedly advocating for a revolt against the King of England, George III. Over a century later, a new wave of journalists called muckrakers continued America's partisan press. Muckrakers were reform-minded journalists, writers, and photographers who crafted narratives that established their contemporary institutions and leaders as corrupt or immoral. These journalists provided detailed, accurate journalistic accounts of the political and economic corruption and social hardships caused by the power of big business in a rapidly industrializing United States. Among them was Upton Sinclair. Sinclair was a pioneer for this wave of journalism and was most well known for his book, The Jungle, which exposed the meatpacking industry. His work in exposing the labor and sanitary conditions brought about the Pure Food and Drug Act and the Meat Inspection Act, which passed in 1906. Beyond individuals, activist groups themselves have been able to use journalism to further their movements. The Crisis, the NAACP's magazine publication, was founded in 1910 and is still active today as the nation's oldest African American publication. The Crisis has continually prioritized telling the truth while simultaneously advocating for the rights of humans and proposing solutions. Journalist Paul Rayburn argues that all journalism is advocacy journalism. Advocating on behalf of the public, loyalty to the audience, he writes that objectivity means journalists act with integrity, fairness, and accuracy, and responsibility to report what they saw or researched. Environmental journalism professor at the University of Colorado Boulder, Michael Kotis, said he doesn't think it's a problem to want your journalism to have an impact. He said people are supposed to take action based on your information and that it doesn't become advocacy until you become a little too fine-tuned with the action you want them to take. Barbara Ehrenreich has a similar point of view and has said she has never seen a conflict between journalism and activism. As a journalist, she searches for the truth, but as a moral person, she said she is also obliged to do something about it.
Because I've been doing a wide variety of writing, in terms of both features, reports, op-eds, commentaries. And in writing, I've done that, since 2004, consistently, taking clear positions. And even when I was doing a feature, I would not hesitate in putting my own voice there, or at least, making it clear where I stood.
Coming back to the Potter box, the dilemma is once again the bias that comes with advocacy journalism. Advocacy journalists and those who support it value the concept that journalism has the ability to change the world, inspiring the public to fight injustice. The principle of these journalists is Aristotle's golden mean. While a journalist does not need to remain objective, they must still make decisions on the appropriate amount of information to give to their audience. An advocacy journalist's loyalties are to the cause, what they are writing about and giving a voice to the voiceless, and the audience, who is intended to take the work of advocacy journalists as a call to action. Advocacy journalism is journalism the way it was intended, for the public. While there are many people against the concept of advocacy journalism, it is clear throughout history that this style of journalism has the power to inspire change. Advocacy journalism still acts as the fourth estate when critiquing those in power while remaining fair and accurate.